Here's a quote about China Coast, a national chain Chinese restaurant that lasted only 5 years in the 1990s. China Coast is to Chinese food what the Olive Garden is to Italian or Red Lobster is to seafood. Not surprisingly, the three restaurants share the block. Actually, they also share the same corporation who owned all three of them, General Mills. In today's episode, we will learn about how the world's largest food service restaurant company that's worth multi-billion dollars failed to crack American Chinese food. Hi, my name is Christy, and this is the American Chinese Food Show. Chinese food was identified by the National Restaurant Association as the most popular and most frequently consumed quote-unquote ethnic cuisine in the United States in the 1980s. The Chinese restaurant market was thought to be over $6 billion even in the 90s, yet it was still very fragmented. It's not a surprise General Mills wanted a piece of it. They bought Lian Chin, a quick service restaurant chain founded in Minnesota in 1984 with plans to expand the chain nationally, but the new locations in Chicago didn't do well, so they just abandoned the plan. Lian Chin, the founder, ended up buying back the chain from them. General Mills kept trying. In 1990, they hired an American-born Chinese biologist turned chef, Terry Chang, to engineer the menu. She first collected menus from Chinese mom-and-pop restaurants across the country to determine which food were most familiar to American customers. From them, they created test menus and conducted user research with taste tests. And the user research findings basically confirmed what thousands and thousands of Chinese takeout owners and chefs already knew. The respondents insisted they yearned for authentic Chinese cuisine, but invariably ended up eating old American favorites like mugu gai pan and fried rice. The poorest sellers were traditional dishes like lo hon tofu, salt and pepper shrimp, and curry-laced Singapore noodles. Terry Chang said, Chinese people talk about authentic Chinese food and they're talking about chicken feet, jellyfish, and bird's nest soup. Our customers talk about authentic Chinese food and they're talking about egg rolls and sweet and sour chicken. So after all this careful study, the first China Coast opened in 1990, very close to Disney World on International Boulevard in Orlando, Florida. It's a General Mills restaurant testing location. They use that location because the tourist-dominated population represents a good cross-section of America. What food made it to the menu? I have the first Orlando menu here. It feels fancy. The cover is a wax paper with bamboo printed on it in the form of calligraphy Chinese painting. There's calligraphy of the Chinese name of the restaurant. The menu is ribbon bound and is tied to a bamboo chopstick with the following words etched on it: blessings, status, longevity, suitable and healthy. The first page is a welcome message with a very 90s tone. Remember that's when Americans got into this whole healthy eating fad? 100% cholesterol, free cooking oils, no MSG. Then immediately you have the cocktails. Going out to a place like China Coast was often a celebration of something. You gotta have the alcohol. Dragon's Tail, Buddha, fortune cookie, and bok choy Bloody Mary. Our towering oriental delight, filled with secret ingredients from the Far East and garnished with a fresh stock of bok choy. Wait, bok choy? This bok choy? On the upper right corner, there are some color-coded tabs to help categorize Chinese food for the customers into dim sum, which they're branding as appetizers, Cantonese, Mandarin, and Sichuan. For each region, they have a map on the left to explain the type of cuisine they would expect. I appreciate the thought that went into it. The dishes chosen barely represented the regions though. Shanghai shrimp is in Mandarin, Mongolian beef is in Sichuanese. There is a dish called Father John's curry. Who is Father John? I have no idea. One reporter said the order came without spice. It was without any curry flavor whatsoever. The warning, do not eat the red chili peppers. They are very, very hot. Might just be for show. Then they have some American entrees because there's always this one person who refuses to eat Chinese in the Chinese restaurant. The desserts are all Western desserts. The last page is a Chinese glossary so customers can learn some Mandarin while they wait for their food. Did the food taste good? Restaurant reviews in newspapers were mostly negative. New chain brings corporate blandness to favorite ethnic food. This is a Red Lobster in feeble disguise. China Coast can only aspire to Red Lobster's level of excellence. Ouch! Most of the foods were flat, obviously tailored to American tastes and experiences, and no doubt the product of corporate kitchens and taste testing. The harshest is from an arts and entertainment editor from the Tampa Bay Times. The wait was between 20 to 45 minutes. It's worth the wait if you want to brag to your neighbors you've eaten there. No, if you're looking for a culinary experience. This is buffet line and frozen food section stuff, not fine dining. Skimpy, bland sauces that hardly suggest flavors. The one duck on the menu, Hung So duck, was either incredibly athletic or admirably elderly. It was so tough it bounced when I tried to cut it. But many customers disagreed. My husband and I recently had one of the most enjoyable dining experiences. We found the food to be very palatable and offered a great variety that we have never seen on the menu. There was a delightful flair to some of the dishes that is not found in any of the local Chinese restaurants. The editor received so much hate for her review, she even wrote it in a column. No matter where I go now, people say, "Oh, you're the China Coast lady." General Mills had something there. The first China Coast restaurants did well. They worked the first one for 2 years before they opened the second and third one in Orlando. After that, 2 new units in Indianapolis. That's basically the speed Panda Express was going. They worked on the first American Mall location in LA for 2 years before opening the second one. But someone at General Mills got impatient and grew the chain from 9 to 45 restaurants in just the year 1993 in Indiana, Michigan, Texas, Ohio, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Kentucky. The average size of China Coast is 7,000 square feet, and it seats about 250 people and needs 150 employees. Each China Coast restaurant has a wrap-around porch with bamboo, painted scenes of China, and a pagoda-style roof. Each lobby is decorated with a large silk dragon handcrafted by an 80-year-old man in Chaozhou. Guess how much it costs on average to build each China Coast restaurant? $2.5 million. That's insane. Hiring an entire team is no easy feat either, right? They needed waiters, hosts, bartenders, apprentices, wok cooks, prep cooks, line assemblers, dish machine operators, cashiers. These can't just be high school kids either. People were expecting service when they go to a sit-down Chinese restaurant that is more expensive than the local takeout place. When General Mills reached the 52nd China Coast in 1994, they stopped the expansion because they were losing $7 million per quarter, which was twice as much as they were expecting. They eventually threw in the towel in 1995. A senior VP of Investor Relations told reporters, "I guess when people picture Chinese food, they think of the little restaurant down the street run by your local Chinese family. Maybe we were too different. This is just one of those times when you put your heart and soul into something, but it doesn't pay off." I call absolute BS. The CEO, Joe Lee, later told the Wall Street Journal, "We moved too fast. Cooks who could handle Chinese dishes were difficult to find, and food was sometimes late and soggy, leaving diners with a bad taste in their mouth." A better response, but still only part of the picture. General Mills spent 5 years and about $28 million before they nailed down just the right mix of breadsticks and spaghetti sauce at Olive Garden. They learned chunky tomato sauce was popular in California, but not in St. Louis, for example. When they were expanding China Coast, General Mills spun off its restaurant division into its separate public company. They had shareholders to answer to. Because they messed up the expansion strategy, they didn't have the time it would need to build up something that feels special enough for people who have easy access to Chinese food at the local place. It's probably also easier for Jolie to just close China Coast than to continue. When they closed those 51 China Coasts, it had already 717 Red Lobsters and 475 Olive Gardens. The 71 million sales China Coast was bringing in 1995 only represented 2% of the total sales. The company's stock actually went up when they announced the closure of China Coast. I honestly think China Coast would have made it big if they had a better strategy, but a part of me is also happy that a Chinese owned chain, Panda Express, is making that 100 billion annual revenue today instead. Guess what they did after China Coast? Bahama Breeze, Caribbean inspired mahi mahi and jerk chicken. That's it for today's episode. If you like our content, subscribe to our channel. See you soon.